A lot of NFL news to talk about, but let's start with a trade that got everyone's attention here in Tampa Bay. And Steve, I think this name came up on our very podcast once or twice or maybe 100 times. I'm not sure which.
Yes, I know Kyle Aucoin, the unsigned defenseman out of Harvard, was the guy everyone was looking for, right?
No,
it wasn't him in the trade?
Wasn't him.
So Oliver Bjorkstrand, that's who everybody had coming to Tampa.
Well,
right?
now he might actually have a bigger role, to be honest with you, but that's not the guy either.
He's the big piece in this trade.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But no,
it must be the 5th-round draft pick that the Lightning acquired. That's
no, they don't care about draft picks. You know this. That's just a throw-in for the player that they gave up, which is one Mikey Eyssimont, I guess, is out as a Tampa Bay Lightning. And so the OG, if you will, because Eyssimont kind of played that role, but the OG is coming back to town. Yanni Gourde, emphasis on G, is now a Tampa Bay Lightning once again, and at least in my house, it's very popular among my daughters, especially my youngest, Alexandra. Big Yanni Gourde fan. You're going to tell me why he isn't the biggest piece to this deal. However, I think it's great to get him back. He's a fan favorite. He gets under people's skin. He gets dirty goals. He's got playoff experience. He's got to be thrilled to leave Seattle and come back to Tampa, I would imagine.
No question about it. I mean, Julien BriseBois is getting the band back together. He brought Ryan McDonough back to start this season.
There you go.
And look at the improvement in the defensive end of the ice, particularly the last 2 months of play. And now he's bringing back Yanni Gourde. Of course, he centered the famous third line during those 2 Stanley Cup championships of Gourde, Gaudreau, and Coleman. And, that was just a hard line to play against. Started every period, went out against your top lines. Didn't matter. Offensive zone, defensive zone, was a pest, got under your skin.
There's so many clutch goals, too, man. I mean, so many clutch goals out of that line.
Yeah, absolutely. Played the power penalty kill,
yep.
And became a fan favorite. No question about it. And coming home, and I know he loves Tampa Bay in this area here. I'm sure he and his wife are thrilled to be coming back.
Oh, God, yeah.
Julien BriseBois at his press conference after announcing the trade on Wednesday afternoon said that both Gourde and Bjorkstrand were told they were being traded in the morning. We're not told to who because the trade was not done yet. So they did not board a plane to go to Nashville, which is where Seattle was going to on Wednesday. And then once the trade became official, which was sometime after 2:00, because if you remember, we talked about Cam Atkinson being placed on waivers yesterday. That was to send him down to Syracuse. That cleared up enough cap space to make this deal. So they had to wait until the waivers clear, and that happens at 2:00 every afternoon. So once Cam Atkinson cleared waivers, and it could be assigned to Syracuse, at that point they had enough cap space to make this move. And the Lightning trade Mikey Eyssimont, 2 first-round draft picks, a second-round pick, and they get Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde, a 5th-round pick, a unsigned defenseman out of Harvard, and they get some salary retention from Yanni Gourde. Seattle keeps 50% of it, and Detroit gets 25% of his salary.
No, I'm really starting to think that the Lightning don't value draft picks. Am I wrong about this?
So let's see. First-round draft picks. Let's see. 2027 traded. 2026 traded. 2025 traded. 2024 traded. 2023 traded. 2020. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2. They took Isaac Howard, who's still at Michigan State, is up for the Hobie Baker Award this year.
Oh.
He's having a phenomenal year at Michigan State in his junior year.
All right.
2020, no draft pick. 2019, no draft pick. 2018, I think, was Nolan Foote. Or was it Cal Foot?
Very good.
One of them.
Or Cal Foot. One of the Foots.
Yeah, it was one of them. They had both of them.
Put their best foot forward.
But yeah, basically, in the 10 to 11-year stretch, they've had like 2 first-round picks that they've taken. But at the same time, when your first-round draft pick is generally in the high 20s or early 30s.
Good point.
It's kind of like a second-round pick. Is it really as valuable in a league that players drafted outside the top 10 generally aren't seeing your ice for 3, 4, 5 years maybe? So, Julien BriseBois said, I'd rather have a lineup full of good players than a bank of a ton of draft picks.
Good point.
He thinks, trading those 2 picks in Eyssimont to get Gourde and Bjorkstrand he's a better team today, and I would agree.
Yeah, okay, so let's get into that. How are they better, and where do these 2 guys fit in on these 3 lines?
Oliver Bjorkstrand, Lightning fans may remember, has been on Columbus for years. He's actually played really well against the Lightning over the years. He's in Seattle now, but you'll probably remember him from Columbus playing with the Blue Jackets. A right-handed shot winger, right winger. He's going to I would assume start tonight, and both of them will be in the lineup tonight, according to Julien BriseBois. They were on a plane Wednesday afternoon heading from Seattle to Tampa.
So Gourde is healthy now because he had missed some time.
Yeah, he played Tuesday night for the first time back from his hernia surgery.
Gotcha.
And that was probably part of waiting for the trade to happen too, is just making sure medically he was okay. Julien was asked that on Wednesday and said, we could have made the trade without it, but seeing him on the ice for a game, seeing he was good,
helps.
Just helps it. But injured players have been traded before. It's not the first time.
Right.
But Bjorkstrand most likely will start alongside Cirelli and Hagel on that second line on the right wing. A right-handed shot winger too, which they don't have many of on this team, so that can help on the power play as well. And that. So remember we talked about, and we've talked about this last year too, but they need another top six forward. Like they've been trying to figure out who's on the wing with Cirelli and Hagel. And last year they added Anthony Duclair to get that other top six forward, and it just kind of evened out all the lines.
Yeah.
And kind of put people where they needed to be. Well, that's what you're hoping the Bjorkstrand trade does this year, and he's got one more year left on his contract. Yanni Gourde is a free agent at the end of this year. But Oliver's got another year at $5 million or so, give or take. And the cap goes up next year, and the Lightning don't really have any big raises coming, so it's easy to fit him into the cap. And Julien BriseBois also said he hopes to sign Yanni Gourde past this season.
Yeah, that's what I saw. It wasn't just a rental. He would like to extend him, which is nice to think that he could be here more than 1 year.
But I am sure that I would like to extend him, but not at the current pay rate he's made.
Right.
It'll be a less rate, but we know Yanni loves Tampa Bay. He may want to come back for less. We'll see. I mean, let's not forget Julien BriseBois also said he wanted to bring Steven Stamkos back, and I believe he did, just at a much lower rate than what Stamkos was willing to play for. We'll see what happens, but that's in the offseason. Right now, you're trying to chase down the Panthers and the Maple Leafs in the division and clinch a playoff spot.
Well, I don't know. There's still time before that trade deadline to go up to Nashville and ask for Steven Stamkos to come back.
Now, unfortunately, you have about $800,000 worth of cap space, not $8 million worth of cap space. So.
Right.
And you can only get salaries retained of 75%, so they don't have enough cap space for that. But Lightning could make another smaller move the rest of this week.
Yeah,
maybe they want to look at adding a defenseman, maybe another depth forward. We'll see.
Yeah,
it would be a smaller move. This was their big move for this trade deadline, which Julien BriseBois seems to always have a big move ever since they got swept out in 2019. After setting all those records and getting swept, ever since then he's made major moves at every trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean they're in great shape, and Yanni at the very least is going to bring energy back to them, to the building. Not that they need more, but they, it's not a big transition for him. These are guys he played with for years and years, so there's not, going to be the learning curve. He'll fill right in there. So yeah, listen, they won. 9 out of 10 and had points in 10 out of 11 games, I think. And
points 11 out of 12 games.
11 out of 12 now.
Yep.
Jeez, it's hard to keep track. But,
yep.
They're playing very, very well. And now you had a couple. And it also will be, great for that room. Those guys will be excited to see him. That's always good. You get that little jolt.
It's funny you say that it'll be great for the room, and it will be. And we know Yanni's personality on the ice, off the ice. But he honestly doesn't know that many players on this team.
Well, good point. Yeah, that's right. He knows the core, and there's about the core 4, right, or 5 maybe.
I mean, he knows Cooch and Hedman and Vazzy and McDonough and Cirelli. He knows those guys,
right?
Chernak. But beyond that, there's not. I mean, most of those Stanley Cup teams are gone. I mean, don't forget Hagel has not won a Stanley Cup. With team.
Yeah, that's right.
Nick Paul has not won one. I mean, some of the guys you think of that have been here a while, and they have been. Weren't on those teams.
They missed out, yeah.
So it's he'll know some, and obviously he knows what he's going to know more of is the coaches and
the
support
system
staff
and
all that stuff.
Yeah,
he'll know well, and so there'll be a lot of comfort there for him, and and hopefully for Oliver Bjorkstrand having a teammate come over with him can make his transition more comfortable
nice,
too. Although we know the Lightning have been really good at helping players transition into this organization.
Oh yeah,
so.
Yeah, it's a big move.
Both should be in the lineup tonight. So
that'll be great. What a reception he's going to get. I mean, I can't imagine how exciting that'll be for him, for the fans, for everybody.
I have to imagine that he'll be the starting center tonight. I would imagine Coop will put his line out there to start.
Yeah, Coop will have a sense of history and all that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
playing to the moment.
Well, and you want to, juice the fans up right before puck drop.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going for it, man. I'm playing that for all there is.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing will be how the bottom 6 now shakes out. So I would assume Nick Paul will probably anchor the third line or center the third line. Put Gourde on one of the wings. So do you put Gergensons? Do you put Gonsalves? Do you put Chafee on that line with him? And then Glendening will center the other line with the other two. So, and they may mix and match and try different things and see, but it'll be interesting how they do that. And if Gourde slots into any of the penalty kill, right now their penalty kill's been really good. Sorelli and Hagel, of course, the top pair, and then Gergensen and Glendening is the second pair typically. Nick Paul and Jake Gensel will be out there at times if either players have just came off the ice or one of those guys are in the box. Those are usually the next two in, but how Gourde factors in there, we'll see too. So,
yeah, because he was one of their top penalty killers. So certainly that's another role he can do. He's a pretty good face-off too, I think, at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he does well in faceoffs. I saw I looked at his stats the other night just to see how he did in his return. Played 12 minutes, was 88% in the faceoff dot, so I'm guessing he was probably 7 of 8 or 8 of 9, whatever, probably 7 of 8 for that. So, yeah, I mean, and look, the fan base is pumped. Like, this is a fan favorite coming back. McDonough was huge to come back, and maybe even more importantly, on the ice, but Yanni Gourde is a fan favorite? Holy cow. Like, there's not many players that were more loved than Yanni Gourde on this team.
And
over the years.
They proved that when he came back with the Kraken. They always do those great video tributes and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of guys obviously leave and come back. But, man, that night I can remember because I wanted to go. I'm kind of I'm into the Krakens. Like, I can't wear a jersey. I'm over 25, whatever. But I love their colors or logo. I think they did a nice job of branding that team. Mm-hmm. And I came very close to getting one of my girls a Yanni Gourde Kraken jersey, just for Yanni Gourde's sake. But
now you can get a Yanni Gourde Lightning jersey for them.
Yeah, there you go. Because he's back and better than ever, like us. So, yeah, exciting day for the Lightning and their fans. And we'll see if there's maybe one more trade that can be made before we get past the deadline. But
yeah, we're close to a point now where it's money in for money out. So
yeah.
Any trade you make, you're going to have to send a player out with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how likely it is, but it's not to say something couldn't happen. But It's not. This was the major trade.
These seem like the big deals. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the big one. And Bjorkstrand, because they have him for another year as well, is huge. Which we know Julien would prefer to get guys with term on it, not just a rental.
Right. And I mean,
once again, did that.
They could sign Gourde to an extension that he may be here more than 1 year, which would be cool.
Mm-hmm. And then Mikey Eyssimont, unfortunately, when you bring players in, somebody's got to go either out of the lineup or down to the minors or gets traded out. And Mikey Eyssimont, another fan favorite too. He was compared a lot to Yanni Gourde, and in some ways, the energy on the ice and seemed like his motor never stopped working.
Right.
That was a lot like Yanni Gourde. Don't think he was quite as skilled as Yanni was.
He didn't score as much when he's good. And you made the point when we were talking, it took a lot of penalties, which seems like, courageous on his part because he's not the biggest guy, but also maybe not the wisest thing to do for your team.
Well, it's the, you're going on a power play, go retaliate type penalty. And the penalties that you don't want to take. I mean, there are times to take a penalty. There are times that sometimes in the course of play, you went for the puck, you tripped a guy. Okay, it happens. Or your stick got up and you high stick somebody. I mean, those things happen. Or breakaways and you're, hey, I'll risk taking a penalty to make sure he doesn't score.
Yeah, interference. Yeah.
Yeah. Those kind of penalties are fine. So your player just got tripped or something happened and you're getting a power play. Now you go retaliate on the guy and now it's an even up and you lose your power play. Or you're in the offensive zone and you're just, you're not controlling your emotions and you let that get the best of you and you take penalties. I mean, those are the bad penalties. That can hurt your momentum, particularly like if you're going on the power play, don't give it up.
Right.
If you need to go after someone because you didn't like the hit or whatever else, take notes and do it later.
Yeah,
Like,
you got the
take your power play.
advantage. Yeah, don't hurt yourself and
But
make
yeah,
it
he would take a lot of that. But part of that was just the way he was wired, and his motor never stopped.
Yeah.
It's not like you sat there on the ice going, "Oh boy, Eyssimont not really going tonight." No, I mean when he was on the ice, he skated hard, and he was, it was just nonstop. But wish him best of luck in Seattle. He was traded from San Jose originally, so he's used to the West Coast. He's been out
Back
there
to the
before,
West
so.
Coast, yeah. But
Yeah.
man, you cannot, other than Miami, you cannot get further away on the outposts of the NHL than Seattle to
Well,
Tampa.
Vancouver would be a little further.
Vancouver would be out there too, yeah.
Yep.
But man, that's a hike. So
Yep.
well, that'll be good. Be good to see him get back in action with Yanni. We got a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the NFL, as I mentioned, and we'll do that here in just a second. Hey, if you guys haven't been to Breitling Boutique, they're our sponsors. We talk about them all the time. They're at International Plaza Mall. They've been there for about 5 years, but the Breitling company has been making these beautiful Swiss watches now for, I don't know, 140 something years. And these are as gorgeous a watches you're going to find. They have the Navatimers, the chronomats that they're known for, also women's watches that we'll talk about in just a minute. And if you haven't been to the store, so go to International Plaza, and in the center area there, the middle of the mall, sort of where at Christmas time, you see them with the Santa displays and all that. Go upstairs, right around the center of the mall, and there's that store, Breitling Boutique, and you're going to go in there and you're going to notice right away the customer service is just phenomenal. Right, they're going to teach you about the product. They have such a great inventory of great Swiss watches, one that will match your desires and price range, hopefully at the same time. And take your time. Have a drink, relax a little bit, and find that perfect watch or gift for your loved one. I mentioned a minute ago, that they have men's and women's watches. On the men's side, they've been celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary. They've had special team watches. It's a limited edition. All 32 teams represented with their team watches. These chronomat watches have the face in the team colors, the logo. If you go to our website on tampabay.com, you're likely to see an ad for that, and you'll see the Buccaneers watch. But they're limited. I don't know how many are left, but if you go in there and ask, they'll certainly tell you what the situation is with those. But just in general, terrific collection of watches. If you've never had a great watch, this is where you want to go. And also for the ladies, if your wife or girlfriend are on the go like mine is, and she's banging around with the kids in the car and all that stuff, these watches, these sports watches for women, are absolutely durable and they're beautiful, and they got all kinds of colored wristbands to boot. It's Breitling Boutique. That's International Plaza Mall. When you go, please tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Before we get to the NFL, one final thing about this Yanni Gourde trade. It's pretty obvious to me and others in the local market that loss to Florida, that's really what got this done. That they were just missing a piece.
No question. I mean, you'd won 8 in a row, and because you lost one at your rival, that now you got to make a trade. That's the whole reason.
They did come back and win after that, though. They did beat Columbus the next night. That aside, though, man, he's the missing piece to beating Florida. All kidding aside, Florida is very good. They're going to remain very good, and you're going to have to beat them to get to a Stanley Cup, right?
Yes.
So there's no question about that. But we talked about it after the game. Look, the Lightning played really well down there. They just didn't manage to bury a few really good chances, and you got to give credit to Bobrovsky, who made some great saves, and it came down to literally the last second in a
This
close
trade's
game.
been in the works for a while, I guarantee.
You think?
And a lot of it is you wait till the trade deadline because the Lightning had to accumulate enough cap space to make the deal work. They were accumulating cap space every day.
And when do you get your best off? When do you get the best deal?
Mm-hmm.
The final day, right?
Yeah.
Like, or close to the final day. Like, it's basically all the cards are on the table. You only got 24 hours or so for the deadline. You're like, all right, what are we doing? Here's my best offer. What's your best offer? Let's get this done.
Well, and look, if you're Seattle, you're waiting to see what other teams want to buy, and
absolutely,
and who wants your players. And if you're the Lightning, you're waiting to see what other players may be available that weren't available 3 weeks ago.
Yep,
because teams were still thinking they were in the chase. But
yep,
I mean, if you know Julien BriseBois, if you've watched this team, you watch the way he's operated for nearly a decade now, running this organization, and he was an assistant before that under Eyssimont. They don't react to individual games. They don't react to one incident or this. Like, it's a well thought out plan of what they do. And it's a reason that most of the moves they make are very successful or turn out good in their favor. That it's not a reaction to, we lost Monday, we got to change something. Like, really? If that's what you think, come on. Like, that means you don't watch or observe this team very well.
Right.
This team is very Julian's very measured in what he says and the moves he makes, and he's very deliberate. I mean, it just look at the history of it. And most of the moves he makes work out fairly well, or they're happy with the chance they took on it. I mean, every move you make like this is a risk. You don't know how things are going to play out. But it's, he even mentioned along the lines of, I'd rather make this move and it didn't work out than regret not making a move and it not working out. We tried. If it didn't work, it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Well, 100% of the deals you don't make won't work. Right. Like, if you don't try, if you're not brave enough and courageous enough or bold enough, and for that reason, and I'm sure we'll talk about this during free agency, because I wrote a story in the Tampa Bay Times on TampaBay.com. We talked about yesterday a little bit about how Jason Light perceives that the Bucs are sort of in that sweet spot where they're a very young team. They got a couple older players that are very, very good, but they really could be really good for a while. And they've had this stretch of, 5 consecutive playoff appearances and 4 NFC South titles, which is good enough, but not Super Bowl worthy yet. But, I mean, the goal is, to be contending every single year. And I like teams that go for it. If I were Jason Light, I would probably, if I were Jason Light, I think like Jason Light. But if I were the GM of the Bucs, and I never will be, nor am I qualified for that job, but I would say I see this Tampa Bay team with a window here that's about 2 or 3 years. Look at San Francisco. I mean, they went to the Super Bowl a bunch of times, and everybody thought, Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and all these guys, like, they're right there. They are on the cusp. This is going to happen. And now all of a sudden, your quarterback's looking for a big contract because his deal is up. He's not a rookie anymore, a 7th round pick. You've lost Ayuk. You had to get rid of. You had to trade him, and you're having to make business decisions now because of the quarterback and others. And so now your window is closing. It's closing a little bit, and that's not the case with the Lightning. Man, the Lightning's window is wide open. So, I like
when you have Vasilevsky playing this well, when you have Cooch at the top of his game,
go for it.
Sorelli and Hagel have been fantastic. Yeah. Gensel's a tremendous addition. Like, they're going for it, and
got to.
Some people have talked about how did they give up too much again? They gave up Mikey Eyssimont, 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick. A couple things on that. One, you never know, and time will tell what those picks kind of develop into, and see if did they miss out on somebody who was extremely
possibly
good that, could turn be huge in the franchise for 15 years. I mean, we don't know. The thing about prospects and picks are you just don't know.
That's right.
There's a promise they could be good, but they can also be busts.
Yep.
And you don't know that.
Yep.
So, but the other part is if you remember when they traded for Brandon Hagel,
right?
They gave up 2 first, Boris Tkachuk and Taylor Radish, and man, the Lightning got crucified for that.
Yeah.
Did it work out?
Yeah.
They traded 2 first and former first-round pick Nolan Foote to get Coleman and Gaudreau. 2 separate trades, but those are what they essentially gave up. They got ripped for that. Did that work out?
Yeah, they lifted the cup over their heads. Yeah.
I mean, Julien BriseBois definitely values current players are at the top of their game with some term and friendly contracts, and he'll give up picks. And with the cap going up for the next 3 years, and it's going up like 20-some million over the next 3 years, like if you have holes, you can fill it with free agency now. The Lightning have very friendly contracts right now.
Right.
And they don't have to, and all their big guys are signed for the next couple seasons. They don't have big contracts coming up. They're not in LTIR. They're not over the cap at this point like they've been over the years past.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact they don't have a ton of picks, but they have a couple prospects now that they really like. Connor Geekie, who we saw here for about 50 games. He's now down in Syracuse. He's going to be a big prospect for them. Maybe they sign Isaac Howard after this season, who's at Michigan State and is a Hobie Baker finalist in college hockey. He's another prospect, a first-round draft pick from a couple years ago. So they have a couple prospects coming up, but with the cap going up, and you have a lot of your stars on very friendly deals based on where the cap's going up. I mean, the Lightning's top players are making $9.5 million a year. I think it's Point, Cooch, and Vazzy. That's a lot of money, but with the cap going up now, like Mikko Rantanen's one of the top free agents for this offseason. He's expected to get $14 million a year.
Oh yeah,
and you have your best players at 9.5. You have Brendan Hagel at what is it, $5 million something and change for a long time locked up. Like that contract looks like a steal now, and he's making a lot of money. I'm not taking that away, but based on his level of production and play,
yeah,
So did the Lightning give up too much? Time will tell on that. I mean, most trades you can't pick a winner and a loser right away, particularly if there's picks involved, because you obviously don't know what those picks are going to develop into. But
that's right.
Julien BriseBois consistently has said, I've got a team that can compete for a Stanley Cup. I'm going to take current players that I have known production and know what I could possibly get out of them. You never know what a player is going to do when they come, but I'll take that over future picks any day, and we'll figure out the future later. Although, like you said, when they traded Sergachev, they get Connor Geekie. That's a first-round pick. Ethan Gauthier is another draft pick there. I think a second-rounder that they're high on. He's a young kid, 19 years old or whatever else. Like, they didn't have to give up any of their top prospects. They gave up some picks, but didn't give up any of their top prospects to get these trades done.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I think you can't fault BriseBois for what he's done, for the record that he has, and this team is definitely positioned to make another run this year, especially the way they're playing of late. So, like I said, I think it's a smart move. They got some players that can help them right now, and they absolutely are going to be one of the teams that everybody's going to talk about as, that team that can win a Stanley Cup. There's not going to be that many that people will have confidence in, but I think the Lightning, you can. So that'll be fun to watch. Meanwhile, a lot of NFL news, man. What's interesting is right before free agency, you start to see the rubber meet the road. And what I mean by that is, like, there are players that either are up for big contracts or you need to sign to extensions. They got one here in Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin, which is a little different situation because of his injury and the fact that he missed, so many games last year with the dislocated ankle in the leg fracture. So there's some real unknowns there with Chris in terms of how good he can come back, when he will come back, and all of that. But just looking around the league, man, and we've been talking about how the Bucs need an edge rusher, and Myles Garrett wants to be traded, from the Cleveland Browns. The Browns say they're not interested in trading him. Okay, fine. Don't know where that one's going. But again, all of a sudden, there was some releases. Basically, one of them being Chargers 5-time Pro Bowl pass rusher Joey Bosa.
Sign him up, Jason.
After 9 seasons. I mean, what, if you can't make a trade for Myles Garrett and the Browns say they don't want to trade him, Joey Bosa?
Well, wouldn't you rather sign a guy instead of trade for a guy? Because you don't have to give up anything.
There's no draft pick compensation. I'd rather sign a guy all day long. That's going to be one that's interesting. Another, and I will say this: we probably haven't made enough of this. Is the fact that the Bucs want a receiver. They want a receiver,
Yes.
and they're going to get him in the draft, or they're going to get him in free agency, or they're going to get them both. And we know there's some guys out there, Devontae Adams being one that was released by the Jets because his boy is no longer there, Aaron Rodgers. How about this? How about this name? And I don't think it's going to happen here, but Seattle wide receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade, and as if that wasn't bad enough for the Hawks, they've also decided to cut Tyler Lockett. So 2 receivers on the move out of Seattle. Metcalf is an absolute beast. Like, he is all that, right? Now here's the deal with him, though. He's in the final year of his contract. So you're going to have to sign him. It's one of those sort of sign and trade deals where, you have to get him on an extension, and we do a 3-year deal or something that works for you. It's going to take up an enormous amount of the cap, I would think. And then you got to give up draft pick compensation, which in my mind, that takes the Bucs out of it. Jason Light values his draft picks way too much for him to maybe make a deal. But man, what a name to fall sort of, out of the woodwork. And then you still have the Cooper Kupps. The Rams GM said that, Kupp staying with the team in 2025 would be the least likely scenario for him. So that's interesting. And I think the Bucs look at their situation at receiver and they go, well, what? He had one more year out of Mike at 1,000 yards. He breaks Jerry Rice's record or whatever. Are we going to get 2 years? Are we going to get 3? Like, very unlikely. I think he's year to year at this point, the way Levante is. So you're going to have to start replacing some of those receivers. You got Jalen McMillan, who did a nice job, especially at the end of the year as a rookie. But who is your number 2? Is it Chris Godwin? Are you going to get him signed? Because if you're going to sign him, I think they're going to sign him before Monday. What does that compensation look like? How many years are we talking about? I mean, he had his ankle on backwards the last time we saw him. No doubt that he'll work to get back and do everything he can, but is he going to be that player who can cut and stem routes the way he wants to this year, or will it be a year from now? And how do you structure that? But Todd Bowles made no mistake about it. We were talking to him at the NFL Combine about the positions of need. Of course, he mentioned outside linebacker and inside linebacker, and kind of went through the list. Then he said, "We need a wide receiver," and then my ears perked up. I was like, "Really?" Because there's some wide receivers in this draft too that could go, in the first round. A number of them, and the Bucs are picking 19th. Would it be something if they went out and used that pick on a receiver? I mean, anything's possible, right? They still got plenty of picks after that.
I suppose it's possible. I can't see a receiver. There's lots of receivers in this draft, and there's going to be
somebody will be there worthy, but I mean, I don't,
I can't see them not using defense in that first
round.
I
can't care. Either.
Unless, I mean, what is Travis Hunter dropping to 19? No. And there's a couple others, but I mean, look, could they use a second-round pick on a receiver? Yes. I just can't see the first-round pick not being either an edge rusher or a cornerback.
That's the thing. A middle linebacker. Be one of those two, you got so many needs, right? You got the edge rusher, you got the inside linebacker, you got the corner.
But typically, middle linebackers aren't picked in that range. I mean, generally,
Devin White.
Occasionally, you get a Devin White or a Devin Bush in that draft where two of them went in the top 10.
That's right.
Rarely happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Typically, middle linebackers are going to be second, third, fourth rounders, not first. So I mean, I suppose if a receiver was ranked high enough on their board and dropped, and the defensive players you wanted weren't there, could they take a receiver? Yes. Or depending on who they sign in free agency. I mean,
that's a big part of it too.
They go get a cornerback and an edge rusher in free agency, then maybe that changes things. I mean, they still have a need in those positions, but now it's not as, I mean, you always say, pick the best available, but it's really the best available at a position
at your
need.
Biggest need, yeah. And they just happen to have needs at every defensive level, right? They got them in the defensive line, edge rusher in particular. They got them at linebacker. Inside linebacker to go with Levante if he comes back. And that's another piece of the puzzle. You got Servassier Dennis. And then I think they absolutely have to get a corner or two. Zion McCallum is fine, but is he going to play every game or not? We don't know. But you'd like to have a young corner that you could bring up, along with Zion and let those guys play together. So there's a lot of ways they can go. I think most of them on defense. But man, a couple big names like Joey Bosa. I mean, I guess we all expected that, but teams wait until they're absolutely sure they can't get a ham sandwich in terms of compensation, and then they dump the guy. But that's a name, that's a proven commodity, that's somebody that might still have some football left in him, and certainly is going to have a chip on his shoulder, I would think, after getting summarily dumped, but. That's the business, man. It's not show friends, it's show business. And the Bosa guys, though, they could reunite in San Francisco. That would be interesting too.
I mean, that was talked about before. I mean, it was anticipated they might release Joey.
Yeah.
And that that the Niners would have interest in it. So we'll see. I mean, if the brothers have interest in it too, I would assume they do, but.
That'd be like the Watts playing together, wouldn't it?
That would have been scary, man.
I tell you what, man, I call him JJ Swat.
Yeah. Well, JJ's not going to the Bengals now. I mean,
no, the soccer team finally lost, right?
Yeah, well, he let up a goal.
It was a goal.
He had a clean sheet for the rest of the season. He was going there.
Well, that's
and then he had to
relief.
disparage Cincinnati on the way out and say he didn't like Skyline Chili anyway.
No, that was unnecessary. What'd you do that for? So Joey Bosa, just looking at his stats, as the case may be, pretty much his whole career actually with the LA Chargers, and however, the last couple of years have not been kind to him. 5 sacks, only 5 sacks last year, 6.5, I want to say, or just say it, Rick, 2023. Then he had the injured year. We just had 2.5. His best year, or his last best year, I should say, was 2021, where he had 10.5. He had 11.5 in 2019, 12.5 in 17. On down the line. This guy's had a lot of double-digit sack seasons. Not many of late. But yeah, he could he help him? Absolutely. You got to get one of these types of guys, right? Like, pick your flavor, but you have to have a veteran who's going to augment whatever you get in the draft. Also help Chris BriseBois, who I know they have a lot of faith in. I just don't know that it's going to be a named guy, right? I just don't know if it's going to be somebody who goes, aha, you got the deal, or you're going to make a deal for Myles Garrett and that sort of thing. I'm not sure it's going to go down like that. So they'll get who they get, but there at least is another option, with both. So it was a 5-time Pro Bowler, by the way, which is nice to have that kind of pedigree in there again, too. That would be great. So Metcalf requests a trade. I don't see him coming here for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is, man, that's going to be an enormous salary. As I mentioned, the Rams said that it's most likely Cooper Kupp will be on the move. So there's a good number of receivers that are sort of going to be available if the Bucs move away from Chris Godwin. And as we're doing this podcast, they still don't have a deal. Although I like these guys that go on the internet that you never heard of too, Steve, that go, word is, hey, over here.
My sources say.
Yeah, my sources say Godwin is nearing a contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What does that mean, really, in terms of like what? And furthermore, you got a 50% shot. Why not shoot it? Why not shoot your shot?
Well,
you know?
It's like I saw some people this week saying Julien BriseBois close to making a deal. Well, every trade deadline, he's made deals going in.
Exactly.
And they have a team that's in the playoff hunt. That's go out on a limb there.
It's a little like Santa's coming to town. It's almost Christmas. He's coming. Yeah, that's when he does it.
Yeah, now if Santa's coming to town in August, now you got news.
Now you got a story. There you go. Yeah, Christmas is on now. Now we can write a headline off of that. But yeah, it's crazy. But like a lot of there's a number of players, a number of names out there, and we'll get into those here coming up a little bit later and maybe in the week. But there are guys that I think the Bucs will have an interest in. I think there'll be probably more that move on, certainly off that list of free agents that then they acquire. But that just means you're a better team. Just means you're a good football team. I mean, a year ago, they didn't know who Bucky Irving was. Well, they might not know who he was, but they didn't have him in the building. They didn't have Jalen McMillan. Like, think about the guys they didn't have, right? Graham Barton, their first round pick. Like, so many unknowns, and then you bring in the influx of youth, and not just youth, but guys that can actually play and do some special things. And all of a sudden, you have a special team. So hopefully they'll do that. Let's see. Let's get our mailbag questions in. You still got time for that if you want to. Send them to us on Twitter at SportsDayTB. You can reach me on Twitter at NFL Stroud. Email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. Lightning back in action soon?
Tonight, Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand make their Lightning debuts, or re-debut for Yanni Gourde against the Buffalo Sabres. It's weird. There's 21 games left in the season, and this is the first time they're playing the Sabres, who are a division opponent.
Really? Wow. So they got them a bunch of times coming up here.
Yep.
Interesting.
So it's and the Sabres are a bad team, so Lightning should look to take care of business tonight.
We should get another win, get back in the win column, and keep it going, and see what they can do. So trade deadlines fast approaching. We'll have all the news on that. TampaBay.com, Tampa Bay Times. If there's any further news with respect to Chris Godwin and his contract, or any other player. Make sure you check it out. Check it out there. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique. They've been in International Plaza Mall now for almost 5 years. Beautiful watches, Swiss watches. They've been in business for 140-something years at International Plaza for the last 5 or so. NFL 104th year anniversary collection watches are all there. All 32 teams and a limited edition were available. Have to see what's left now. But you can enjoy the customer service, enjoy the staff, and find yourself a nice watch for yourself, your wife, your girlfriend. You will be very happy, and make sure you let them know that they heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.